City Council this week approved $13.7 million in street repair contracts, which will cover more than 30 residential streets in the coming year. The projects are part of the Residential Street Rebuild Program, and most of the contracts were awarded to local companies. The 34 streets are just the beginning of a phase of the program to target the worst residential streets in the city of Corpus Christi. Director of Engineering Jeff Edmonds says the repairs and reconstruction projects are long overdue.
The thing that we haven't been able to address until recently has been the worst of the residential streets.
Edmonds says voters approved a 2-cent tax increase, allowing the city to begin working on those streets. City Council also funding an additional $500,000 to give more Corpus Christi businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic an opportunity to take advantage of interest-free loans.